Welcome to the space of deeper awareness and transformation. If you're someone who seeks clarity beyond the surface, you're in the right place. Before we begin, I invite you to become a member of Mind Clarity, where we explore ideas that shift the way you think, live, and create your reality. This is not just a speech, but a journey into understanding the power within you. And as you listen, allow yourself to move beyond limitations and reconnect with the source of who you truly are. What if everything you've been chasing was never meant to be chased at all? What if the life you desire isn't something you earn, but something you align with? There is a quiet force within you, shaping your reality long before results appear, and most people never learn how to listen to it. The question is not whether you have power, but whether you are connected to it. And once you are, nothing you truly intend can remain out of reach. What I'm really talking about here is the power of intention. It's about reaching a point where your desire is no longer weak or uncertain, but steady and unshakable. When you carry that kind of clear, unwavering intent in your heart about something you truly want to create or bring into your life, something shifts. It stops being a possibility and starts becoming an inevitability. It cannot fail because you are no longer separate from it. You are aligned with the very source it comes from. This idea is deeply spiritual. It's not just about thinking positively or wishing for something. It's about recognizing that you are connected to a greater field of intelligence, a field from which everything originates. When you begin to identify yourself with that field, you stop feeling like someone trying to get something, and instead, you become someone who allows things to come through you. I'll go deeper into what intention truly is and how it works, but I want to share something personal first. When I was a child growing up in an orphanage, I used to say something that didn't make sense to most people. I would say I was the richest kid there. And strangely enough, I was the only one who always seemed to have money. It wasn't because I had more resources. It was something internal, something I believed and carried within me. Now, decades later, that same inner knowing has shaped my entire life. I've never had to make a house payment. I've never had to make a car payment. Over the years, I've been able to purchase homes, not just for myself, but for people in my family, my wife's family, my children, and even people I've worked with. And I want to be very clear about something. It's not because I'm more intelligent, more educated, or more talented than anyone else. It comes from something much simpler, yet much more powerful. It comes from understanding a truth that was once described by Earl Nightingale, someone I deeply respected. He shared what he called the strangest secret, and the essence of it was this: we become what we consistently think about. It sounds almost too simple, almost like it can't possibly hold that much power, but it does. Our thoughts are not passive. They are active forces that shape what we experience. Every day, the thoughts you dwell on are quietly building your future. They are forming your reality, piece by piece. And once you begin to see that, you start to realize that change doesn't begin outside. It begins within. There is also something deeper to understand about where we come from. Most people believe their origin begins with their physical birth, but that's only part of the story. There is a source beyond that, a place without form, without boundaries, a kind of infinite awareness. I remember a teacher once responding to a question, "Where does everything come from?" by asking, "Where does your question come from?" And in that moment, it became clear. The origin of everything is the same unseen space. That invisible source is not separate from you. It is within you. And when you align yourself with it, your entire perspective begins to change. I once wrote about this idea that there is a spiritual solution to every problem. And what that really means is this: everything in life is energy. Some energy moves slowly and feels heavy, like fear, doubt, illness, or struggle. Other energy moves quickly and feels light, like love, peace, creativity, and joy. When you bring higher, faster energy into your life, it doesn't just push the lower energy away, it transforms it. So if you find yourself facing lack, conflict, or any kind of difficulty, there is another way to approach it. Instead of staying stuck in the problem, you can shift your awareness. You can move into a different level of consciousness where the problem no longer defines your reality. It's like stepping into a new perspective where solutions already exist. It may feel unfamiliar at first. It may even feel impossible. But when you begin to see yourself as someone who is capable of creating and attracting what you want, rather than someone who is limited by circumstances, everything changes. Your vision expands, your expectations shift, and life begins to respond differently. What I'm suggesting is simple, but not always easy. There is a place within you, a quiet, powerful space that is connected to everything. It's a place you can return to at any moment. From there, you are not trying to force life to happen. You are allowing it to unfold in alignment with your intention. And when you truly understand that, you begin to live differently. You stop chasing and you start creating. You stop doubting and you start trusting. And slowly, consistently, your outer world begins to reflect that inner shift. There was a writer I've always admired, Herman Melville, one of the great American voices of the 19th century. He gave the world Moby Dick, along with many other powerful works and poems. But what always fascinated me wasn't just what he wrote, it was how he connected to what he wrote. He had this habit of stepping away from his workspace in Massachusetts and walking out into the open fields. He would lie down on his back in the middle of tall cornfields, especially in late summer, when the crops had grown so high they surrounded him completely. As he lay there, all he could see was this endless wave of corn stretching in every direction. And in his imagination, that field became an ocean. He wasn't just looking at corn anymore, he was seeing something far greater. He allowed his mind to transform what was ordinary into something vast and alive. When I used to teach literature, many people believed Moby Dick was simply about a man obsessed with chasing a whale. But that's not really what it was about. At its core, it was about going after something that most people would consider impossible. It was about refusing to give up, no matter how overwhelming the odds seemed. It reflected a kind of determination that doesn't bend, no matter what stands in the way. Melville captured something deeper than a story. He was pointing toward a truth about human nature, the drive to pursue something meaningful, even when it looks unreachable. While lying in those fields, he once expressed an idea that has stayed with me. He described how, just as the vast ocean surrounds the land, within every human being there exists a quiet, untouched place filled with peace and joy. But that inner place is often surrounded by confusion, fear, and the noise of a life not fully lived. And the message is simple but powerful. You have to find your way to that place. You have to reach that inner space where calm, clarity, and joy already exist. It's not something you create, it's something you reconnect with. This is what I'll continue to explore, how to consciously connect with that deeper source within you. Because when we enter this world, we don't stay connected to that awareness for long. Very quickly, we begin to form an identity, something we call the ego. The ego is nothing more than a collection of ideas we carry about ourselves. But over time, we begin to believe those ideas as absolute truth. We start defining ourselves by what we own, what we do, how others see us, and what we think we lack. We see ourselves as separate from others, from opportunities, and even from the very things we want to attract into our lives. We start believing that what we desire is somehow outside of us, disconnected from who we are. And perhaps the most limiting belief of all is the idea that we are separate from our source, from the deeper intelligence that gave rise to us in the first place. These beliefs quietly shape our reality. They limit our ability to create, to attract, and to experience life fully. Not because we lack ability, but because we've accepted a version of ourselves that is incomplete. There was another thinker I deeply respect. Henry David Thoreau. He lived during a time of great conflict and stood firmly for what he believed in. At one point, he refused to pay taxes because he could not support actions he felt were unjust. That decision led him to spend time in jail. His friend Ralph Waldo Emerson came to visit him and questioned why he was behind bars, suggesting his place was outside, contributing to society. But Thoreau's response turned that idea upside down. He questioned why Emerson was comfortable outside when something so wrong was happening. Eventually, Emerson paid for his release, but instead of returning to a normal life, Thoreau chose to live simply and intentionally, away from the noise of society. He spent time at Walden Pond, reflecting, writing, and observing life from a deeper perspective. From that experience came one of his most powerful insights about success. He believed that if you move forward with confidence in the direction of your dreams and commit yourself to living the life you have imagined, you will encounter a kind of success that goes beyond anything you expected. And that idea ties everything together. Whether it's Melville imagining an ocean where others saw a field, or Thoreau choosing to live deliberately according to his beliefs, the message remains the same. Your inner world shapes your outer experience. When you begin to shift how you see yourself, when you release the limitations of the ego and reconnect with that deeper source within, you unlock something powerful. You stop waiting for life to change, and you begin to change how life responds to you. And from that place, what once felt impossible starts to feel natural. That idea of success, something showing up in your life in ways you never expected during ordinary moments, is incredibly powerful. It reminds us that real success doesn't come from chasing things outside of us, but from living in alignment with what already exists within us. You carry dreams, you carry desires, and when you start living from that place instead of constantly reaching for what you think you need, everything begins to shift. Your thoughts are not random. They are the channel through which a higher intelligence expresses itself. In a very real sense, the way you think is the way that source energy moves through you. And when your thoughts begin to match the nature of that source, when they reflect peace, creativity, abundance, and possibility, you start to access the same power that created everything in the first place. When that alignment happens, there is no separation between what you are capable of and what that source is capable of. The same force that creates life, that moves energy, that brings things into existence, begins to work through you. History has shown us examples of individuals who operated at that level of awareness. People who seem to defy limitations, who demonstrated what is possible when the mind is fully aligned with that higher field. And yet the message has always been the same. That ability is not reserved for a few. It exists in all of us. Every single person has the capacity to think, create, and attract in ways far beyond what they currently believe is possible. So why doesn't it happen for everyone? Why do people still struggle with illness, with lack, with addiction, with limitation? The answer is not that they lack power, it's that they've identified with something smaller than who they really are. They've become attached to an identity shaped by fear, by past experiences, by the beliefs of the ego. When you begin to release that identity and reconnect with your deeper source, something remarkable starts to happen. Instead of you chasing what you want, it begins to move toward you. Opportunities, ideas, and solutions begin to appear in ways that feel almost effortless. It's not something you force, it's something you allow. I can say this with certainty because I've lived it. I've always felt deep within that my life had a purpose long before I even understood it. It's as if there was a quiet agreement made before I ever arrived here, a direction I was meant to follow. If I had to describe it, it would feel like being guided toward teaching self-reliance. And to truly understand that, life placed me in situations where I had no choice but to learn it. Growing up without the usual support systems forced me to depend on something deeper within myself, and that became one of the greatest gifts I could have received. When people look back at difficult moments in their lives, they often label them as hardships. But the truth is, when you're young, you don't carry those labels. You simply live, you adapt, you grow. It's only later that we begin to attach meaning to those experiences and use them as reasons to explain our limitations. As adults, we often look back and say, "This is why my life is the way it is." We point to our past, to our upbringing, to circumstances we had no control over. But in doing that, we give away our power. Because the truth is, your life today is shaped far more by the choices you make now than by anything that happened before. You are not your past. You are the result of the decisions you continue to make. When you step into a state of inspiration, when you begin to live from that deeper connection, you start to see life differently. Over the years, I've reflected on certain principles that have shaped my thinking, ideas that I've tried to live by and share with others. They didn't come all at once. They were built slowly, through observation, experience, and reflection. I remember when I was 19, someone handed me a book that would leave a lasting impact on me. It was a collection of stories, and one of them stood out in a way I'll never forget. It was written by Leo Tolstoy, who at the time was one of the most recognized figures in the world. His work reached people across the globe, long before the kind of communication we have today even existed. At that point in my life, I had just joined the Navy. I was traveling across the ocean, heading toward my assignment, spending long days at sea with time to think and reflect. Somewhere along that journey, I picked up that story and started reading. It told the life of a man who had followed a path that was expected of him. He lived according to what others believed was right. He built a life that looked successful on the outside, but inside he felt disconnected and unfulfilled. He continued living that way, even teaching the same patterns to his own family, despite knowing something was missing. As his life came to an end, he was faced with a realization that was both simple and devastating. He questioned whether everything he had done, everything he had built, had been based on the wrong understanding of life. That moment stayed with me. It made me reflect deeply on what it means to truly live. Because the greatest tragedy is not failure, it's reaching the end of your life and realizing you never truly lived in alignment with who you are. That's why, at a young age, I made a decision. I wrote something down that would guide me for years to come. It was a reminder to myself, something simple but powerful. Don't leave this world without expressing what's inside of you. Every person carries something unique, an idea, a gift, a vision, a voice. And the purpose of life is not to suppress it or delay it, but to bring it forward, to live it fully, and to share it without fear. What's being described here is a way of looking at life that puts responsibility and meaning back into your own hands. At its core, it's about the idea that your inner world, your thoughts, beliefs, and sense of purpose, shapes your outer reality far more than circumstances do. Instead of chasing things you think will make you happy, the focus shifts to aligning yourself with what already feels true and alive inside you. This perspective often connects to the teachings of Wayne Dyer, who spoke a lot about living from inspiration rather than obligation. He suggested that when you're connected to a deeper sense of purpose, what he called source, you stop forcing life and instead begin to attract the experiences that match that inner state. Whether someone interprets that spiritually or psychologically, the underlying idea is the same. Your mindset and identity influence your actions, and your actions shape your life. A key tension in this philosophy is the difference between living authentically and living by conditioning. Many people grow up following expectations, family, culture, society, without ever questioning whether those paths actually fit them. That's where the reference to the death of Ivan Ilyich becomes powerful. In that story, the main character lives a life that looks successful on the outside, but feels empty on the inside. His final realization that he may have lived the wrong life captures a fear that resonates with a lot of people. The message isn't about rejecting responsibility or pretending struggles don't exist. It's more about how you interpret them. Instead of seeing your past as something that defines your limits, This viewpoint suggests seeing it as something that shaped your strength. The idea of self-reliance comes from this: learning to trust your ability to respond to life, rather than waiting for conditions to be perfect or for someone else to guide you. There's also an important psychological layer here. When people identify strongly with their problems, whether it's failure, addiction, scarcity, or insecurity, it can become part of their identity. And once something becomes part of your identity, you unconsciously act in ways that reinforce it. Breaking that pattern doesn't happen by force. It happens by shifting how you see yourself. Instead of, "I am this problem," it becomes, "I'm someone capable of change." Another part of this idea is the concept of inspired action. When you're aligned with something meaningful, effort feels different. You still work hard, but it doesn't feel like constant resistance. There's a sense of momentum, like things are unfolding rather than being dragged forward. People often describe this as being in the flow or feeling guided by something larger than themselves. The story about self-reliance highlights something subtle but important. Adversity isn't always just an obstacle. It can also be training. Difficult experiences can force independence, resilience, and clarity in ways comfort never could. That doesn't mean hardship is inherently good, but it does mean it can be used in a way that strengthens rather than defines you. The idea of not dying with your music still in you ties everything together. It's about expression, using your abilities, ideas, and passions while you have the chance. A lot of people delay what matters to them because they're waiting for certainty, approval, or the right time. But that time rarely arrives in a perfect form. So the real risk isn't failure, it's never fully showing up at all. When you step back, this whole philosophy is less about miracles or grand transformation and more about alignment. It's about noticing where you're living out of habit, fear, or expectation, and gradually shifting toward what feels genuine and meaningful. That shift doesn't happen instantly, and it doesn't remove all struggle, but it changes the direction of your life in a very real way. And over time, that direction matters more than any single achievement. Everything you seek begins within you, in the quiet space where intention, belief, and purpose meet. When you release the identity shaped by fear and return to that inner source, life no longer feels like a struggle, but a response to your state of being. What once seemed distant begins to move toward you, naturally and effortlessly. And when you truly understand this, you realize that the power you were searching for was never outside of you. It has always been who you are.